bulletins.com.
Good morning and welcome to GMTV on Sunday the 1st of November. In a moment we'll have the Sunday Review, and at 7 o'clock John Stapleton will be here with the Sunday programme. But first the news. At least 100 people spent the night in emergency shelters after their homes were flooded. The situation in parts of Shropshire, Hertfordshire and Worcestershire remains critical, and there are fears that more rain tomorrow will lead to further bouts of flooding in the area. In Central America, it's feared that up to 2,000 people may have been killed after Tropical Storm Mitch caused a massive landslide in Honduras. The storm, which began life as a hurricane, has caused widespread devastation, with nearly 400 people already killed in the storms in the last few days. A British warship has now been sent to the area to help victims. The United Nations Security Council has unanimously condemned Iraq's decision to cut off all dealings with UN weapons inspectors. In an emergency meeting last night, it demanded that Baghdad rescind the decision immediately and unconditionally. Yesterday, Iraq said all inspections of installations and monitoring sites would be banned because they had nothing left to do in the country. Two stories dominate the sport this morning. Prince Naseem Hamed won his WBO featherweight fight against Ulster's Wayne McCullough in Atlantic City overnight. In a unanimous decision on points, Naseem was declared undefeated champion, although McCullough was the first boxer to take him the distance in a title fight. And Mika Hakkinen has won his first Formula One world title after his only rival, Michael Schumacher, retired from the Japanese Grand Prix. The Finn had led the World Championship by 4 points going into the final race of the season and only needed to finish ahead of the Ferrari driver to win the title. Let's have a quick look at the weather now, and a much drier, sunnier picture for most of us. There'll be scattered showers in the north and west, but elsewhere generally dry and sunny. A few showers will sporadically appear in the Midlands, whilst in Scotland there'll be a sleet or snow. Tonight, clear in the east at first and cold, but then cloud and outbreaks of rain reaching the west towards dawn. Another widespread frost for Scotland. That's it. The next bulletin is at 6:30, but next, part one of the Sunday Review. Good morning and welcome to the Sunday Review with me, Sian Jarvis and Wendy Ebsworth. Later in Matter of Faith, we'll have an interview recorded earlier this week with a leading member of the Jewish community, Lord Janner, about his work with the Holocaust Education Trust and his hopes for the Arab-Israeli peace process. But first, this week's headlines. Argentine President Carlos Menem joins British politicians to remember those killed in the Falklands conflict. Welsh Secretary Ron Davies resigns as First Minister of Wales after a serious error of judgment. And the 77-year-old American astronaut John Glenn becomes the oldest man in space. Argentine President Carlos Menem began his official tour of Britain on Wednesday. He laid a wreath at St Paul's Cathedral in memory of those who died during the Falklands conflict. During his 5-day visit, Mr Menem met the Queen and Prime Minister Tony Blair in what's been described as the start of a new era between the two countries. Ray Stewart reports.
This was Carlos Menem making history, the first Argentine leader on British soil since the two countries went to war over the Falkland Islands in 1982. Mr Menem played no role in the Argentine invasion. He was in jail, a political prisoner. More than 1,000 lives were lost in the 10-week campaign to liberate the Falklands, 258 of those killed from the British task force. But some of the veterans of the conflict welcome Mr Menem's visit here.
It can only be for the positive, really, because as long as he's here, we're going to be talking about trade and industry, hopefully, and they're going to sort of renegotiate all that and we'll become friends again.
It was Argentina's defeat that brought politicians like Mr. Menem to power. Democracy, a growing economy and a free press followed. The changes in the years since the war have led to a gradual thawing of relations between the two countries. Mr. Menem has told his supporters in Argentina he'll recover the Falklands by the year 2000, but he won't be bringing the issue up during his visit here, with the emphasis being put on building diplomatic ties. Ray Stewart, GMTV News.
General Pinochet's lawyers went to the High Court on Monday, but failed to try and secure his immediate release. A Chilean transport aircraft was on standby at RAF base in Oxfordshire all week, but the government denied there were any secret moves to release the general. The government is under pressure to explain its handling of the affair in the Commons. This report was sent on Monday. Human rights campaigners have been staging an angry protest here since General Pinochet was arrested 10 days ago. They're determined to bring him to justice. So too are the Spanish authorities, who are trying to extradite the former Chilean dictator to stand trial for the murder and torture of thousands of victims during his regime in the 70s and early 80s. Britain has rejected repeated demands from the Chilean authorities for the release of Pinochet, despite the threat to relations between the two countries. The Foreign Secretary said it's neither proper nor possible for the government to intervene in Spain's extradition proceedings, claiming he has no power to interfere in a legal process. But the government is coming under increasing pressure for their handling of the affair. The Tories are demanding a common statement, calling it an appalling mess.
No one can be happy with the proceedings over the last week. I mean, government confusion, cabinet ministers bringing into question the government's whole position that this is a due process of law.
Pinochet's lawyers will mount a High Court challenge appealing against Pinochet's arrest in an effort to secure his immediate release. Sian Jarvis, GMTV News, Westminster. Serbian police and armoured cars pulled out from Kosovo this week to meet NATO's deadline for the withdrawal of troops. But Foreign Secretary Robin Cook has warned the Yugoslav government that they need to do more to meet the international community's demands and that the threat of airstrikes remains. Our political editor, Gavin Partington, sent this report on Tuesday.
On the move at last, Serbian forces leaving a checkpoint on the main road out of the Kosovan capital, Pristina. They left just hours before the expiry of the latest NATO ultimatum to Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic to pull his troops out of the mainly Albanian province. But those who know the region say the movement of Serb forces now won't diminish the suffering.
The first priority must now be the humanitarian crisis. That, if anything, has deepened. More people are out of the forests, but they're now living in appallingly overcrowded conditions with no food, no infrastructure.
Foreign Secretary Robin Cook has warned airstrikes remain an option as today's deadline for the withdrawal of Serb forces approaches. President Milosevic has to comply with a new agreement thrashed out with NATO at the weekend. NATO ambassadors meet in Brussels today to assess whether the Yugoslav government has done enough. They will then decide whether or not the planes fly into action. Gavin Partington, GMTV News.
A car bomb exploded in Gaza earlier this week, killing one person and wounding another. The bomb, planted at the Gush Katif intersection, exploded at the time buses transport children to school. It was unclear whether the explosion occurred in an area under Palestinian or Israeli control. In the latest round of peace talks, Israel insisted any deal should be tied to a crackdown on terrorism. Back home, there was increasing speculation over the exact circumstances surrounding Welsh Secretary Ron Davies' shock resignation on Tuesday. Police questioned 3 men in connection with the knife point robbery, which led to his departure from the cabinet and his standing down as candidate for First Minister for Wales. Mr. Davies met one of his attackers at a notorious gay meeting place, but has denied any sexual encounter. The Labour government is suffering the kind of headlines which so damaged John Major's government. Despite Downing Street's swift action to limit the damage, Ron Davies' shock resignation has left many questions unanswered.
I was a victim of a crime. I've given a full statement to the police. They're investigating it. And what I want to do now is to minimise any embarrassment to myself, my family, or to the government.
What we do know is Ron Davies drove here to Clapham Common, a known meeting place for homosexuals. There he met a stranger and agreed to drive off with him to meet two of his friends. At a Brixton housing estate dubbed Crack Alley, he was mugged at knife point. Ron Davies, who is married with a daughter, has denied that there had been a sexual encounter. He was tipped as the future First Minister for Wales. That career now lies in tatters.
If he feels that it's been sufficient error of judgment to leave the cabinet, which is a major step in anyone's career, then I think it's inconsistent for him to carry on as a leader going into the Welsh Assembly elections. I think that most people would simply regard that as fair.
This first cabinet resignation is a serious setback for Tony Blair, who had promised to deliver a sleaze-free government on coming to power. Sian Jarvis, GMTV News, Westminster. A blueprint for a new system of electing MPs was unveiled on Thursday. The proposals from a commission led by Lord Jenkins are expected to be welcomed by the Prime Minister, but he's unlikely to set a date for a referendum on the plan. This report from our political editor, Gavin Partington, who sent it on Thursday.
Last year, Labour swept into power with a Commons majority of 179. Given the scale of that victory, you might assume the government wanted to keep the current voting system at all costs. Certainly that's what many Labour MPs want. At Westminster last night, they met to coordinate their campaign to keep first past the post.
Every time we've had coalition, we've had weak government, and the Jenkins proposals will lead to coalition, will lead to weak government.
It's the view held by most of the cabinet too, including John Prescott. To reconcile Labour concerns and meet the needs of Lib Dem leader Paddy Ashdown, Lord Jenkins is backing a system called Alternative Vote Plus. Most MPs representing constituencies as they do now, with others representing regions according to their party's share of the vote. In the Commons yesterday, the Tory leader challenged Tony Blair to make up his mind.
We've made it clear all the way through that we're committed to a referendum, and we're committed to it as part of our programme for the next Parliament. Does that apply, yes or no?
I would have thought it is sensible to wait for the Jenkins Commission to report before stating a view on it.
The Prime Minister will welcome today's report, but he's expected to steer clear of any commitment on the date of a referendum. Gavin Partington, GMTV News, Westminster.
A government scheme to help lone parents find work, training and childcare went nationwide this week. The New Deal for Lone Parents plan will be available to all single parents on income support. Participants may be compelled to attend interviews at local job centres. But in a pilot scheme earlier this year, 1 in 10 single parents managed to find a job. A public inquiry into one of the biggest medical scandals of the decade began in Bristol this week. 2 surgeons were struck off and a third was banned from operating on children after 29 babies died following heart surgery at the Bristol Royal Infirmary. 77-year-old veteran astronaut John Glenn began his work in space again on Friday morning, more than 3 decades after he became the first American to orbit the Earth. But the shuttle Discovery's blast-off from Cape Canaveral didn't go entirely according to plan. A panel ripped from the tail as the craft launched. But NASA says the mission will not be affected. Avovi Todd reports.
This is beautiful. The best part is do a trite old statement, 0G, and I feel fine.
At 77, John Glenn is the oldest man to travel in space, and if his first comments to Earth are anything to go by, the trip is proving every bit as exhilarating as his historic first mission on Friendship 7 36 years ago.
Let the record show that John has a smile on his face, and it goes from one ear to the other one, and we haven't been able to remove it yet.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Glenn's return has reignited America's passion for space. Bill and Hillary Clinton were among the 7,000 who crammed into the actual space center at Cape Canaveral. Others packed roadsides for vantage points, and in Washington, fans crowded into the Space and Air Museum where Glenn's original craft stands on permanent display. Even the Big Apple came to a stop. People crowded into Times Square to see history being replayed.
Yes! Yes!
Glenn is effectively a guinea pig, allowing NASA to gauge how space travel affects the elderly. When he first blasted off into space, only one of his 6 fellow crew members had even been born. Avovi Todd, GMTV News.
We'll be back in a few minutes when I'll be talking to our Matter of Faith guest, Lord Janner.
Welcome back, the old and the new.
PC Bradley, Ashfordley Police.
The good and the bad.
A bit long in the tooth to be playing doctors and nurses, I think.
The bold and the brave.
Policeman never sleeps.
Sunday night drama.
Lovely.
That's more than just a heartbeat. Tonight at 8 on ITV.
If I look a little bit worried, I have good reason.
In the name of health and beauty, GMTV's Kate Shackland endures the physical torment in 4 of Europe's most exclusive health spas.
Believe it or not, this is the most popular treatment here.
So discover some of the more drastic methods to maintaining that perfect body as GMTV dives headfirst into Europe's health spas every Tuesday on Lorraine Live.
Just what the doctor ordered.
Good morning, you're watching GMTV's Sunday Review. A crisis in emergency shelters after their homes were flooded. The situation in parts of Shropshire, Hertfordshire and Worcestershire remains critical, and there are fears that more rain tomorrow will lead to further bouts of flooding in the area. Ray Stewart reports from Bewdley, still one of the worst affected towns.
The floods continue to claim lives. A 67-year-old woman drowned yesterday after falling from a bridge into the swollen River Loo in southwest England. And in Bewdley in Worcestershire, the bank-bursting River Severn has become an unlikely tourist attraction, drawing in crowds to see the chaos the river has wrought.
People just come and have a quick look and off they go. It's crazy.
Now comes the clean-up. The costs will be huge, as will the effort to get homes and businesses back to normal.
It's quite a big job really, because water can cause a lot of damage, and it's quite a sewerage type water. It comes out of all the drains, which makes it quite a mess actually.
The mess is evident in Bewdley's Riverside Cafe, with regular mopping up sessions going on in the hope that business might pick up and help pay the bills.
I've had 2 days trade in 7 days, so you just got to keep doing it, you know, just don't give up. You know, don't let it get to you. You know, keep smiling. Keep going to the pub next door.
Britain's just had its wettest October for a decade. Now, the residents here might think it can't get any wetter, but November is promising more of the same. Ray Stewart, GMTV News, Bewdley in Worcestershire.
In Central America, it's feared that up to 2,000 people may have been killed after Tropical Storm Mitch caused a massive landslide in Honduras. The storm, which began life as a hurricane, has caused widespread devastation, with nearly 400 people already killed in the storms in the last few days. A British warship has now been sent to the area to help victims. A British air hostess viciously attacked last week by a passenger has arrived back in Britain. Fiona Weir says she's considering her future as a steward after the attack on a flight to Malaga last Friday. Aileen Taylor reports.
Fiona Weir arrived back at Manchester Airport early this morning. She's had 18 stitches after being hit over the head with a vodka bottle and cut on the arms and back after an altercation with a passenger at Malaga Airport. The strain of the incident shows.
Yeah, very tired indeed. Just need a good sleep.
Her employers are calling for all airlines to take tough action to ban violent passengers.
We'd like to see a national register of people who are known troublemakers, just in the same way as football hooligans. And I think we could, if we can only get a list like that, then it would help all the charter airlines, not just Air Tours, but all the others as well, to try and cut down on the increasing amount of violence which seems to be endemic amongst modern passengers.
The attack on Fiona Weir is the latest in a growing catalogue of incidents involving violent passengers. This man had to be restrained during a transatlantic flight. Violence is an issue all airlines are now having to address. British Airways cabin staff are among those being trained in self-defence and restraint techniques. The issue of how to protect staff and passengers from violence will be high on the agenda at Tuesday's meeting of the UK Air Safety Committee. Aileen Taylor, GMTV News.
The United Nations Security Council has unanimously condemned Iraq's decision to cut off all dealings with UN weapons inspectors. In an emergency meeting last night, it demanded that Baghdad rescind the decision immediately and unconditionally. Yesterday, Iraq said all inspections of installations and monitoring sites would be banned because they had nothing left to do in the country.
In the coming days, the Council will remain actively seized of this matter in order to ensure the implementation of the relevant resolutions and secure regional peace and security. Thank you.
Former Welsh Secretary Ron Davies has hit out at new allegations about his private life made in several newspapers this morning. In a statement last night, Mr Davies claimed that the press was trying to destroy him. Last week, he resigned from the cabinet after what he called a moment of madness on Clapham Common in London. Yesterday, a 38-year-old man appeared in court in connection with the alleged incident. Two stories dominate the sport this morning. Prince Naseem Hamed won his WBO featherweight fight against Ulster's Wayne McCullough in Atlantic City last night. In a unanimous decision on points, Naseem was declared undefeated champion, although McCullough was the first boxer to take him the distance in a title fight. And Mika Hakkinen has won his first Formula One world title after his only rival, Michael Schumacher, retired from the Japanese Grand Prix. The Finn had led the World Championship by 4 points going into the final race of the season and only needed to finish ahead of the Ferrari driver to win the title. In golf, Lee Westwood and Colin Montgomery are all set for a final day showdown to decide who's Europe's #1 this season. Westwood is joint leader of the Volvo Masters going into the final round at Jerez. Montgomery is a shot behind, with the winner taking all. There'll be more news at 7 o'clock. After the break, it's part 2 of the Sunday Review.
Next week on GMTV.
A treat for you pop pickers with a new entry from an old Rolling Stone, Bill Wyman. People are popping their way up the charts. Barry Manilow is still hanging on in there. The magnificent Meatloaf makes a comeback. New sounds from old smoothie Alexander O'Neill. But topping the charts is the ultimate guide to New York next week on GMTV.
Helpline, what a waste of money. Nobody calls. What we could do with the money, eh, Clive? I go to a naked elf farm and get a big Turkish man to rub me up and down with olive oil and scrape it all off with a strigil. Ooh, very sensual, Clive. Ooh. Ooh. Take me there, Clive. Ooh.
The last time you're going to see this.
I want it to go away.
Mark Frieden goes for a chin tuck Monday and Tuesday.
Good morning, you're watching GMTV's Sunday Review. A crisis meeting took place at Buckingham Palace on Tuesday to discuss sensational claims made in a new royal biography. The book by Penny Junor alleges that Diana, Princess of Wales, made death threats against Camilla Parker Bowles and that she had an affair with one of her bodyguards. On Monday night, Prince Charles and Mrs. Parker Bowles issued an unprecedented joint statement denying that they were behind the book. Alan Fisher reports.
The Duchess of York is the latest friend of Diana to condemn the new book by Penny Junor. She called the allegations shameful and chilling. The most controversial claim in the book, Charles, Victim or Villain, is that Diana made death threats to Camilla Parker Bowles in a series of anonymous phone calls. The Prince of Wales took the unique step of issuing a joint statement with Mrs. Parker Bowles. It stated Penny Junor's book was not authorised, solicited or approved by the Prince of Wales or Mrs. Parker Bowles.
Clearly, someone somewhere has been saying something, if we are to believe any of the allegations that are in this book. But again, I repeat, as far as the Prince of Wales and his office are concerned, they are adamant that they had nothing at all to do with it, and nor did any of their real close friends.
Author Penny Junor has refused to comment on the row, but Diana's step-grandmother says it's an attack on someone who did nothing but good.
It ought never to have been published, and certainly not put in the papers, because it's unkind to her. And why? Why be unkind?
Just last month, Princes William and Harry appealed for the hurtful speculation about their mother's life and death to come to an end, an appeal that obviously has fallen on deaf ears. Alan Fisher, GMTV News.
And Prince Charles's friends from the music and acting worlds took to the boards at the Lyceum on Wednesday night to celebrate his 50th birthday. The surprise of the night was the first public performance by Geri Halliwell since splitting from the Spice Girls. Lucy Vandenbroek was there.
Robbie Williams sang, Clive James and Miss Piggy competed for laughs, and Rowan Atkinson resurrected Blackadder after 10 years in honour of the birthday guest. Backstage, the stars had their own greetings and messages for the Prince.
Happy birthday, Charlie. Lots of love and kisses, Sam.
Happy birthday, and long may you carry on being who you are.
He's a laugh and a tickle, and he's a charming man.
The Prince himself won huge applause playing a waiter in a sketch with Roger Moore and Stephen Fry. But the highlight of the evening was Geri Halliwell's Marilyn Monroe-like rendition of Happy Birthday.
Happy birthday, Your Royal Highness. Happy birthday to you.
A star-studded lineup then for the Prince's half-century, a chance for him to show that he can act and for Geri Halliwell to prove that she can sing solo. Lucy Vandenbroek, GMTV News, Central London.
Yes, happy birthday. And Prince Charles talked of his stage nerves to the actress Emma Thompson. He met the British actress at the charity premiere Primary Colours. The film portrays a womanising politician's route to the White House. Aileen Taylor sent this report on Friday.
I'm going to do something really outrageous. I'm going to tell the truth.
John Travolta stars as a womanising politician who becomes president in a story with a loud ring of truth.
The book this film is based on caused a storm when it was published, but many of the events in the story look tame in comparison with the real-life Monica Lewinsky affair.
The Prince of Wales met the stars of the film at last night's London premiere. For the British actors, the American accents were a challenge.
American, it's very direct, very sort of straight, and that role was hard. It wasn't. It's a very kind of muscular, kind of chewy way of talking as well.
When I arrived on set every day, I spoke in the accent. It takes about half an hour to settle down.
A life in politics didn't seem to appeal to the celebrities in the audience.
And unfortunately, William Hague has rather ripped off the image. I have to compete with him.
Oh, I don't know. I couldn't imagine running for anything in the government. I mean, I'm kind of outspoken, so I wouldn't get elected.
Controversy aside, last night's premiere raised £50,000 for charity. Aileen Taylor, GMTV News in London's West End.
Veteran heartthrob Sean Connery has packed a punch for mature men by being voted Britain's sexiest. Geri Halliwell is chasing the limelight too, with a documentary about her life. And Sporty Spice has splashed out on a sporty car, but she won't be driving it. Here's Andrea Thomas.
Undoubtedly a sex symbol in his early Bond years, but Sean Connery has proved he can still cut a dash in his late 60s. A television poll declared him Britain's sexiest man. Rising to titanic heights once again, Kate Winslet got the vote for sexiest woman. Geri Halliwell may have been toning down her sexy image since she took on her new job as a UN ambassador, but it's reported that she wants to be back in the public eye with a fly-on-the-wall documentary following every step of her glamorous life. Meanwhile, Sporty Spice has opted for the racy look with a new little black number. No, not a dress, but a £30,000 sports car for her brother, proving at least one of the family still wants to live life in the fast lane.
That's what you call a nice sister. The Best of British was on show on Tuesday night as a glittering array of stars gathered in London for the National TV Awards. John Thaw scooped the top prize as most popular actor, but Amanda Burton stole the show when she was declared Most Loved Actress. And writer Ian McEwan won the Booker Prize with his novel Amsterdam. McEwan pipped Booker's favourite Beryl Bainbridge to the £21,000 award announced at a ceremony in London. The winning novel centres on the sex scandal surrounding a fictional Foreign Secretary. Now it's time for Matter of Faith with Lord Janner, who I interviewed earlier this week. Welcome to Matter of Faith. Joining me in the studio this morning is Lord Janner, a leading member of Britain's Jewish community and for many years a prominent Labour MP. Lord Janner has campaigned tirelessly for the rights of Holocaust survivors and for greater understanding between Jews and Muslims both in the UK and the rest of the world. As president of the Holocaust Education Trust, Lord Janner has been instrumental in trying to retrieve the assets of Holocaust survivors which were stolen by the Nazis. He also recently went to live with an Arab family in Israel to get a feeling for how the other side in that conflict lives. Welcome to Matter of Faith, Lord Janner.
Thank you very much.
Now, I said there that you'd spent time with an Arab family. What was people's reaction when you said that you were going to do that?
Same as yours. It's the other side of a conflict, but that's not the way to look at it, and it's not the way it was, because these are Arab citizens of Israel living together with Jewish citizens of Israel, and they don't know each other properly. So part of what I was able to do, and what I hope will also come out of the book, which I've written, which will appear in about 10 days' time, is to try to get people to understand. Because if you understand and you know that people like the Haleli family, whose guest house I lived in, want to live in peace and happiness, then we've got the start.
Do you think it would help if more people did that kind of thing?
Oh yes, I recommend the Shadi guest house, and people should get to understand the civilization. It's not just there. I mean, I've just been in the Yemen, and one of the sheikhs who invited us beforehand with a group of MPs a few years ago, and I asked him whether it was going to be safe. He said, look, anybody who comes to my country as my guest is safe. There's a tradition of hospitality and of goodwill which gets lost in all the politics.
Is that part of the problem, though, that there is a lack of understanding about the way other people live their lives? And by understanding and by spending time with people, then perhaps these conflicts wouldn't arise in the first place, or certainly would, but maybe we would find a resolution to them.
Yes, it's fear of the unknown. It's fear of the unlike. And if we can get rid of the ignorance of each other, then we can start getting to know each other, which is the purpose of the Maimonides Foundation, where we foster relations between Muslims and Jews in Britain and outside. And we reckon if we get to know each other, then if things do happen, for example, if there is an incident of ill will with either community, we can go to people and say, fine, how do we deal with this? Because at the moment, we're strangers.
Yes, and I mean, at the moment, the talks are going on, but there's no resolution, so many hurdles. Do you think that the conflict can be resolved?
If you're talking of the Middle East conflict, I didn't believe the Irish conflict could be resolved, and it looks as if it's going to be. Shimon Peres, who I'm very close to, told me recently that in his view, once you've got a momentum, it'll get there. It may pause, it may go down, but eventually, because people will get sick of living in fear and disaster, they will want to make peace with each other, and I certainly hope that's right.
Well, one of the huge sticking points, I mean, there are many, but the issue about Jerusalem is one of the key problems, because it is an important place for Christians, for Muslims, for Jews as well, and yet no one sort of group of people can claim it. Also, I mean, the Jews would like to claim it for themselves, wouldn't they? Do you think it can be divided?
It's got to be divided in the sense that each of the great religions must feel that their rights are respected. I don't know the answer to this, but I once talked with President Sadat of Egypt shortly before he was murdered. He said, Jerusalem is the most difficult, it's the toughest, it's the most sensitive. Leave it till last. And then if people really want peace, they will get it, because they'll find ways to hang flags from appropriate buildings and places to satisfy their own sensitivities. And if you can do that, we'll get there. But if you start with Jerusalem, you will get nowhere. That was his view, and I think it's right.
And you're also involved with the Holocaust Trust, the Education Trust, trying to educate people about that. Do you have a fear, I mean, we see conflicts all around the world, but do you have a fear that something on that scale of evil could happen again, particularly when you look at Kosovo and what's happening with the Albanians there?
Let's put it the other way. If you don't realize what's happened in the past, then you won't be able to prevent it from happening in the future. We believe that you've got to educate people in the Holocaust to prevent it from happening again, so that people will understand it. And we've got to see what happens if racists get into power. And we can't just leave it as they did in the days of the Holocaust, far too many. And once you've been there, then our job now is to say, okay, what was the truth? What happened? We want transparency, but not just for historical reasons, but so that at least some of the survivors and their families can get some measure of justice, whether it's from the Swiss or, for example, from the Austrians, which we're dealing with at the moment.
Well, that's right. You're trying to reclaim their assets, the assets which were taken or seized before the war.
Yes, and also in Britain, I'm pleased to say that the government has very honourably apologised for what happened and said, fine, we will try to return assets placed here for safekeeping, which were appropriated by the custodian of enemy property, and Lord Archer Sandwell's dealing with that with the Commission, and we're very pleased.
So you're making progress on that one?
Oh yes, it's moving. It's all moving. And 2 years ago, we didn't believe anything was possible when we first went to Switzerland, and now it is moving at great speed, and it has two purposes. One is the purpose of restitution. The other is exactly what you said. It has revived memories of the Holocaust. It has, it's a form of education, which, because it's topical and interesting, people know about, and that's good too, isn't it?
It is good, but at the same time, something of that scale, a lot of people want to forget it, to forget that it ever happened, but you're not one of those people. You believe that the memories should be kept alive in order to prevent anything happening again.
Yes, we don't think many people want to forget it, except those who have a sense of guilt. And there are, of course, we started with some of the Swiss bankers who weren't very anxious to remember, but people are now getting the idea that you've got to open up the past so as to have a possibility of a decent present for at least some of the survivors, and to have hope for the future that we'll be able to stop it happening in other places, or at least have to know what happens and to understand history for the purpose of looking to the future.
How do you square your own personal faith with what happened then? I mean, the horrors and the horrors that you see happening in the world today.
Well, half my family were murdered in Lithuania. They were locked up in the synagogue and burned to death. It wasn't the Germans who did it. It was the Lithuanians under the Nazis' guidance. So when I, as a youngster, went into the war crimes group in Germany, I knew what I was wanting to do. And I was very pleased we eventually got the War Crimes Act in here. And that aspect of it is very powerful. But if you're asking generally, as a Jew, it's a family faith. It starts in the home. It revolves around my family and the wider family. It is private in its own way, but it's very motivating. And my father, who was very active in political life, always brought us up to know that we were very, very lucky to live in Britain, this decent country, and we were lucky to have a faith of which we should be proud. We should serve our Jewish people and use that as a base for serving the community at large.
But do you ever question it? I mean, your faith must have been challenged on a great many occasions, particularly when you look at what happened to your family. I know that for a lot of people, when horrors happen, people say, you know, why me, why us, why our family?
Oh, absolutely. And to go into the question of my beliefs, it would take much longer than we have. It's enough to say that my daughter is proposing to become a rabbi, which itself is a rather unusual thing for a Jewish family. And so I'm surrounded by it one way or another, and it is a very deep and important part of my life.
Okay, Lord Janner, thank you very much for joining us this morning. And just to remind, your book is called
One Hand Alone Cannot Clap, and Robson's are publishing it in about 10 days' time.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Now, don't forget, you can always drop us a line with your comments on the programme. The address to write to is the Sunday Review, 47 Bedford Square, London WC1B 3DP. That's the Sunday Review, 47 Bedford Square, London WC1B 3DP. The Sunday Review will be back at the same time next week, but from Wendy and me, enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Welcome back, the old and the new.
PC Bradley, Ashfordley Police.
The good and the bad.
A bit long in the tooth to be playing doctors and nurses, isn't it?
The bold and the brave.
Policeman never sleeps.
Sunday night drama.
Lovely.
That's more than just a heartbeat. Tonight at 8 on ITV.
The Philips Azure XL iron with extra steam has a unique sole plate, which gives exceptional gliding quality to always help you look your best. The Azure XL iron from Philips with the XL sole plate. Philips, let's make things better.
Not so dirty then now, eh? I've started using this new Radox Everfresh. Never gets messy, always fresh, and leaves your skin feeling moisturised. And it floats, so you never lose it. Well, it's about time I made a fresh start.
New Radox Everfresh bath wash. It's fresh every time.
Life after soap? No problem.
If I look a little bit worried, I have good reason.
In the name of health and beauty, GMTV's Kate Shackland endures the physical torment in 4 of Europe's most exclusive health spas.
Believe it or not, this is the most popular treatment here.
So discover some of the more drastic methods to maintaining that perfect body as GMTV dives headfirst into Europe's health spas every Tuesday on Lorraine Live.
Just what the doctor ordered.
Hello, good morning and welcome to GMTV. I'm John Stapleton with you this week's edition of the Sunday programme. Coming up on the show today, the CBI president tells us government legislation is making the economic downturn worse and demands a U-turn. The Tories spokesman on the media tells us the BBC is wrong to ban discussion of Peter Mandelson's private life. And going plain crazy, what can be done to stop the drunken louts who terrorise passengers at 35,000 feet? All that a little bit later, but first, the news from Sian Jarvis.
Thanks, John. Good morning. At least 100 people spent the night in emergency shelters after their homes were flooded. The situation in parts of Shropshire, Hertfordshire and Worcestershire remains critical, and there are fears that more rain tomorrow will lead to further flooding bouts in the area. Ray Stewart reports from Bewdley, still one of the worst affected towns.
The floods continue to claim lives. A 67-year-old woman drowned yesterday after falling from a bridge into the swollen River Loo in southwest England. And in Bewdley in Worcestershire, the bank-bursting River Severn has become an unlikely tourist attraction, drawing in crowds to see the chaos the river has wrought.
People just come and have a quick look and off they go. It's crazy.
Now comes the clean-up. The costs will be huge, as will the effort to get homes and businesses back to normal.
It's quite a big job, really, because water can cause a lot of damage. And it's quite a sewerage-type water. It comes out of all the drains, which makes it quite a mess, actually.
The mess is evident in Bewdley's Riverside Cafe, with regular mopping-up sessions going on in the hope that business might pick up and help pay the bills.
I've had 2 days trade in 7 days, so you just got to keep doing it, you know, just don't give up. You know, don't let it get to you. You know, keep smiling, keep going to the pub next door.
Britain's just had its wettest October for a decade. Now, the residents here might think it can't get any wetter, but November is promising more of the same. Ray Stewart, GMTV News, Bewdley in Worcestershire.
In Central America, it's feared that up to 2,000 people may have been killed after Tropical Storm Mitch caused a massive landslide in Honduras. The storm, which began life as a hurricane, has caused widespread devastation, with nearly 400 people already killed in the storms in the last few days. A British warship has now been sent to the area to help victims. A British flight attendant viciously attacked last week by a passenger has arrived back in Britain. Fiona Weir says she's considering her future as a steward after the attack on a flight to Malaga last Friday. Aileen Taylor reports.
Fiona Weir arrived back at Manchester Airport early this morning. She's had 18 stitches after being hit over the head with a vodka bottle and cut on the arms and back after an altercation with a passenger at Malaga Airport. The strain of the incident shows.
Yeah, very tired indeed. Just need a good sleep.
Her employers are calling for all airlines to take tough action to ban violent passengers.
We'd like to see a national register of people who are known troublemakers, just in the same way as football hooligans. And I think if we can only get a list like that, then it would help all the charter airlines, not just Air Tours, but all the others as well, to try and cut down on the increasing amount of violence which seems to be endemic amongst modern passengers.
The attack on Fiona